Hello, welcome to Thoughts from the Road. Today we're going to pick up kind of where we left off last time, and we're going to go through that second half of Matthew chapter 5. Now, for me, there are some passages in here that are extremely uplifting, but also extremely hard to follow if I'm doing it in my own strength. So without too much further ado, let's dive into the Word and see what God has for us today. Matthew chapter 5, we'll be starting in verse 21. You have heard it said that the ancients were told, "You shall not commit murder, and whoever commits murder shall be liable to the court. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court, and whoever says to his brother, 'You good for nothing,' shall be guilty before the Supreme Court, and whoever says, 'You fool,' shall be guilty enough to go into the fiery hell. Therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, then come and present your offering. Make friends quickly with your opponent at the law while you are with him on the way, so that your opponent may not hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you are thrown into prison. Truly I say to you, you will not come out of there until you have paid your last cent." So we're going to go into these series of "You have heard it said of them of old time," or in ancient times. And this first one is one that probably to me just stands out as probably the hardest one to follow in my own strength. You see, I've never had the problem thinking of, I want to go kill that person. That's never been on my mind ever. But yet, many times on the road, driving my truck, I look at that car that just cut me off and go, what an idiot. Sometimes more flowery than that. And I'm sure if you've been on the road for any length of time, you have seen some really dumb things happen out there. But when we call people fools, when we call people names, when we get angry at them, Jesus is telling us that is the same thing as killing them, because it's that heart attitude that Jesus is looking for. And I know in my own strength, I will never be able to live up to that standard. Let's keep going. Verse 27. You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye makes you to stumble, tear it out and throw it from you, for it is better for you to lose one of your parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you, for it is better for you that you lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go to hell." This passage is also a challenging one. What we look at, what we think about. It's not just the act anymore. Jesus is saying it goes past acting on those thoughts. It's even having them. We need to guard our eyes. We need to guard our thoughts from those things that we should do. Let's keep going here. Verse 31. It was said, "Whoever sends his wife away, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you, everyone who divorces his wife, except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard it said of the ancients were told, 'You shall not make false vows, but shall fulfill your vows to the Lord.' But I say to you, make no oath at all, whether by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or earth, for it is the footstool of his feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. Nor shall you make an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. But let your statement be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond these is evil." Our words matter. And in ancient times, a lot of times you would find that people would swear an oath to get out of something. And Jesus is saying, don't make your oaths. Let your word be true. Let's keep going. You have heard that it was said, "An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." But I say to you, do not resist an evil person, but whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. If anyone wants to sue you to take your shirt, let him have your coat as also. Whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to him who asks of you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. Oftentimes, we want to get something when something's been done to us. The law of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was set up for Israel so that the crime that was committed would be paid back in equal measure, not above and not below. But oftentimes we want more. We want that revenge. And Jesus is calling us here to sit there and say, don't go after that person. If they want something from you, give it to them. I know that's hard for me. I don't know about for you. Let's keep going here. You've heard that it is said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, pray for them that persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? If you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? Therefore, you are to be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now, this saying is a little harder to find in the Old Testament, but it was a very common saying in the time of Jesus, of this idea of love your friends and hate your enemies. But Jesus is calling us to love those that we don't like, of those who we disagree with. Now, this doesn't mean that they can just run rampant over what we think, but we are still to love them. We are still to reach out to them, because that's what Jesus did. Later on, I don't know if it's in Matthew or one of the other Gospels, Jesus says, I did not come to the healthy, but to the sick. And so often, I want to only minister. I only want to love on the people that are healthy, that think like me, that look like me. But Jesus is calling each one of us to step outside of ourselves, to reach out to that person that we would not normally interact with, that person that we would not normally want to be around. Because we are to love all people. Now, as I said earlier, we can't do any of this in our own strength. For us to follow these words, we need Jesus' power. We need his love. And the only way that we can do that is when we accept the free gift of salvation, of his sacrifice that he paid on the cross for us. Without that, none of this is ever possible. Even following the Old Testament law was impossible for anyone who tried. So, as you go about your day and you're thinking about those things, stop. Remember what Jesus would do. There's a great old saying, what would Jesus do? Well, we find that here in the Bible. And if we don't know this, then we can never answer that question. So until next time, keep your eyes on the road. Have a safe journey.